So some functions are actually both one-to-one and onto, okay? That actually can only happen if the domain and the codomain, which by the way is the same as the range because it's an onto function, but if the domain and the codomain have the exact same cardinality, that's the only way that you can have one-to-one and onto. And actually that's one of the ways that we defined when two sets have the same cardinality. If you can define a one-to-one function from one set to the other that is also onto, then those two sets have the same cardinality. Here's kind of a graphical depiction of what it means to be one-to-one or onto, and it might help you have some intuition. So right here we have something that is one-to-one, and you can see that there's nothing that has two arrowheads going into it, right? Like that. This does not happen, right? On the other hand, we have the element 2, and there's nothing going into it, so it's not onto. Okay. Now here, everybody has something going into it, so it is onto, right? But here we have two arrowheads that are going into the same point, so it is not one-to-one. Okay. Here we have one-to-one and onto, and notice there's 4 elements here, 4 elements there. It has to have the same cardinality because there's that one-to-one onto function between them. Here we have a function that is not onto, right? So that right there, it's not onto because the number 4 has nothing mapping into it, and it is not one-to-one because the number 2 has 2 arrowheads going into it. And our last example is something that's not a function at all, right? So here we have a, and you see that it's related to 2 and is related to 4. That is not a function. Okay, so that's just a pictorial way of saying some of the same things that we've been saying so far in this module. Okay, I want to kind of end this one-to-one and onto by introducing 3 words that you might hear a bit. I usually don't use them. You know, they're kind of fancy words, and I prefer to quote normal words. One-to-one, onto, one-to-one, and onto. Those are the phrases I use. But if a function is one-to-one, it's often also called an injection. Okay? If a function is onto, it has the tendency of being called a surjection. Okay? So injection is the same as one-to-one. Surjection is the same as onto. Some books will use those. Some classes that you might take will use those terms. Now, in the case that a function is both one-to-one and onto, then it's called a bijection. Think of it as bi, meaning it goes both ways. So that would make sense.